Hi everybody, welcome to my office. This is going to be the quickest video because it's looking like, as far as our doodle polls going, tomorrow evening is going to be the best time for most people for our live class session, so that's going to be the plan. However, I also got a request to go over the next steps in professional development paper, so I wanted to do a video around that really quick. I'm hoping that this goes through well because I'm seeing there's like some lines. There was one. There's one. I see it on my side too, and also it's feeling a little sketch, the video feed here. So hopefully it's not too burdensome for you guys. Okay, so I wanted to go through to this Welcome to Interpersonal Processes section and go down to the next steps in professional development paper. You guys might be tired of them, but this is another self-reflective paper. And so what you want to do is give yourself an outline of not just kind of what you want to work on as far as where you want to grow your skills, but also acknowledging you want to own some of your deficits and acknowledge where you could use some bolstering, like what skill sets could use a little bit more improvement. And so how are you going to work them through your MSW practicum sites and your MSW courses. So here is just a really much more specific rundown of what that entails. Definitely, if some of you are in the joint human sexuality and social work programs, this would be a good time to think about what you want to do with that when you graduate. It's a very specialized program. You're going to have a very competitive degree. What's your thoughts as far as how to utilize it? And then for many of us, it's more about growing and advancing in the career we currently have and what kinds of skills are necessary for that role. If you're looking to advance to administration or policy management, what types of experiences have you not had that you would like to have? But that's the first section. The second section, this guy right here, is personally the one I'm the most anticipating. I wouldn't say look forward to, but I would say that's the most significant for me, is to see that you have a real and honest depiction of what your personal biases are and how they might impact your work in a social work environment. For instance, I had a colleague of mine who worked in the prisons for her practicum. And she was actually a human sexuality dual degree, but she went into the prisons because it was a chance to get exposure to a field she's never had. She ended up running a group for men who had committed sexual assault with minors and found herself having a really hard time with that. And humanizing that population, feeling comfortable, being vulnerable with them, also joining them where they are and understanding the very complicated diagnosis and symptomology around pedophilia. So that's a bias that a lot of folks might have. Personally, on a personal level, I did some work in the foster care setting, working with foster families and biological families, and I'm sure some folks who are in this course who have similar experiences, they may have experienced some of those concerns as well. Families who have different perspectives as far as child rearing, have different perspectives as far as what is considered punishment and what is considered abuse. I had a family once who boiled their toddler's feet in response to a temper tantrum, and the child was two years old, just barely walking age. So progressing towards reunification for that was something I brought to my supervisor in supervision because I struggled with it. I struggled with different families who maybe only know punitive effective measures to redirect behaviors. And so what do you feel are going to be biases towards you, and how can you work through that? I had a hard time for a minute around polygamous relationships. It's just not something that I've had experience with. And so I had to expose myself to it, and I went through a very specific and regimented, like, exposure therapy almost, like, meet people who have different family styles, get connected with other types of structures in a family, and understand the benefits that people who are living in that type of family style experience. And so you want to think about all of those different groups that you might not have a proper understanding of. And if you ever say you're, like, blind to the difference, that's something to work on, because difference is real. My sexual orientation is not your sexual orientation, most likely. So, like, to say that there's no difference there ignores a very specific part of someone's life. And so what part of other people's lives might factor in to the relationships you build in the social work field? Now, obviously, because I'm grandstanding, this is the part of the paper that I'm the most passionate about. But I do think a huge part of what sets social work away from just any other clinical practice or therapist is our ability to look at ourselves and say, these are the things I'm bringing to the table. Nobody is raised in America without acknowledging the systemic oppression systems that exist here. Systemic oppression systems is redundant, but you can't grow up here without acknowledging the fact that people of color have different experiences than people who are white, right? Like, I don't walk into a store and feel like somebody is watching me because of my race. I'm considered typically the baseline status quo. So you have to acknowledge this difference. How do you relate to it? How do you work through any guilt that you have for it? How do you empower other people of difference to have as equal of a platform as everybody else? And I think that's an important thing to consider. So this is my most important part of this paper. And I know it's not the longest. I think I don't get to choose these rubrics or this prompt, but I do like it. If it becomes longer than 4 paragraphs, I'm not going to cry about it. Feel free to grandstand. I clearly like doing it. So then you want to really consider and, like, step back and think, all right, I have goals to grow in this capacity, and maybe I'll learn, like, for instance, learning about polygamous relationships for me. Let's use that as an example. How am I going to educate myself in that domain? What are my steps? What are my action steps? Consider this like a treatment plan. For those of you that are working in that kind of capacity, this is a specific, you want measurable, actionable, realistic steps. If anyone knows the term SMART goals, do SMART goals. And if you don't, it might be good to, like, Google it, because it's like, you want it to be measurable, you want it to be realistic, you want it to be the A and the S and the T. You should Google this. I will post it. I will post a link. It's going to drive me nuts. I have to do them for Widener. Measurable, realistic, actionable. Actionable. S. What is this? Specific. Relevant. I don't know. I'll look it up and I'll put it down. This is going to drive me crazy, but I'll put a link up once I find the SMART goals acronym. Probably shouldn't have used that acronym. Clearly, I don't have much proficiency with it. So you're going to want to create specific goals. So you're going to want to identify, what do you have to learn? For polygamy, what I ended up doing was reading a few books from people who lived in that lifestyle. Some folks were living with sister wives as part of their religion, and some folks were in a polyamorous relationship. What does that look like? On a personal level, I did end up establishing friendships with folks My partner's best friend is actually in a multi-partner relationship, and so learning from him how it's worked for him and his partners, and getting to know him as a person really helped me get a good grasp of the ways this benefits folks. And then you want to think about it professionally. I'm working in a capacity where you typically don't have to interface with married folks because I'm working with students, but if there are professional conferences, if there are things, I mean, we're part of the human sexuality program here, and so I have access to a wide breadth of professional growth opportunities, and so I could explore those too. So for any goal that you have, you want to drill it down to what goals can I do educationally to explore this? What goals can I set for myself personally and professionally if you work in a capacity to have access to things? Or if you want to prepare for professional situations which you might encounter in your sites or future social work careers. So, you have references that you can use. I definitely would look into specifically around your growth goals, different resources that would be helpful for you, and then include them in your references and in your dialogue about where you're going to go with future growth. If you have any concerns about using the NASW Code of Ethics, let me know. They're pretty widely accessible online, so you can look it up. And the good thing about the Code of Ethics is that they're very large umbrella terms. So there's one about just, working towards social justice, like most everything we do. Like me working on having a better understanding of folks in polyamorous or polygamous relationships is enhancing social justice for those folks, because they're going to have a much more educated practitioner should I encounter them in the field. So you just want to kind of consider how that's going to be something you can navigate your world with. I think it's important because you're going to use that throughout your career here and then likely be tested on it in your LSW. So it's good to know. Here's a rubric. As always, I tend to stick with it pretty closely, so feel free to follow it. If you have any questions, let me know. We are going to be doing a live session tomorrow that covers more closely the material for this week, as well as your discussion posts, updates on your small group presentations, and so on and so forth. So I'm pretty excited. Hopefully you guys will bring great questions and we'll be able to have a dialogue. But I know some folks wanted to get started on this paper now, which makes complete sense to me. So here we go. I will see you tomorrow, hopefully. Okay. Bye, guys.